appointed as a chairman of All India Council of Technician Education AICT. He is a chairman of All India Board of Vocational Education AICT.
Professor Anil, I think,
Yes, sir.
I was not able to unmute myself, because you are having the controls, but thank you for the introduction. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Now I request our today's speaker to please guide us. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Can I share my screen? Is it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So just a moment. Is this visible?
Yes, sir. It is visible. Connected teachers.
We have to remain connected. So whatever be the times, we have to remain connected, whether offline or online. Before we move ahead, I'm sure this course has started 2 days ago. Dr. Hivrekar, this.
Yes, sir. This is the third day.
This is
Yes,
the
sir.
third day.
The
So
third day.
yeah. So I'm sure participants would have had the opportunity to hear all other speakers speak in these last 2.5 days, so to say. So can we make this session interactive rather than I going through the presentation?
Yes, sir. Yes, definitely.
Means we can definitely go through the presentation, but if there are questions, and if we can share our experiences with the participants, I think that will be more useful than simply going through the presentation. So within the allotted time, we can run through the presentation, or make it more interactive, and participants can ask any question that they think is relevant to the course and the topic today. No questions?
The participants can unmute themselves and have a question.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, please.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Very good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to you.
Sir, I am from Sushant University, Gurgaon.
Yes.
Actually, I have attended this program and learning a lot about new teaching methodologies and the role of the CO and POs in our curriculum and how to motivate the students. So I have just one question. Like we should have learning outcome for each lecture, and we prepare the curriculum as per the learning outcomes.
Yes.
But sometimes so when there is a long weekend, so there are few holidays in between and there's a long weekend and students do not turn up, the strength is very less. For example, only 24% of the students turn up in a class, or 10% of the students. There are few days in a semester like this. So then so how to go about it? So when you teach as per the lesson plan, so at the back of mind you have that the other students are missing out important information, because the lectures are connected to each other. If you miss out some information, you may not understand in the next lecture all the topics. So how to go about it? So should we stick to the syllabus, or shall we repeat the lecture in the next class, those who have not come? So how to I mean 100% how to follow the curriculum? So it's very difficult as a teacher sometimes to decide when there are such situations.
Ma'am, there are a number of answers to this. and variety of thought process can be considered. So first is if our students are not attending, I think the first step is self introspection as to why is it that students are not taking my class. Right? A little while ago, we heard our previous esteemed speaker, Dr. Sayali, Professor Sayali ma'am, and I just happened to hear because I got connected 10 minutes earlier, and she gave a very practical instance or an example, you know. So we have to make sure as to what is it that is missing in us. Right? She talked of teachers being role models, and all of us, all teachers, all connected today on the platform for this session. If we were to ask each one of us, who's your role model teacher or who was your role model teacher in the school, in the college? And I'm sure each one of us will have one or two names which immediately come to the mind. And why were they role models for us? Not only they were role models, but we started liking the courses that were taught by them. So if I started enjoying mathematics, I started enjoying biology. It was because the teacher who taught me biology, who taught me mathematics, taught me those courses in a different way, giving more examples perhaps in those days, making the fundamentals, concepts clear to us. And then they remained in our mind, and we also started scoring well in those courses. So I think first thing is to find out what's missing. And the example that Dr. Mrs. Sayali, Professor Mrs. Sayali gave a little while ago was that we have to bring a blend of different speakers into the course that we are delivering. So when we look into the camera and we deliver as teachers, we are not sure how the students are experiencing us. Whatever we are mentioning, whatever is being presented, is it making interesting for them? Are we able to excite our students? Are my slides thought-provoking that my students have a couple of questions when I throw open the slide? So teachers, as we are made, we try to make sure our first objective is to ensure that we complete the curriculum in the given time span. We also want to make sure that today's class I must complete with the specific course outcome that I have in mind. That is what you mentioned. So to break the monotony of the teacher, what is it that I can do when we are teaching in the online mode? Because if you are in the offline mode, the teacher has ample opportunity to look at the students because it is eye-to-eye contact. The teacher is able to gauge, the teacher is able to judge, the teacher is able to decide if one has to repeat something or explain something again in a different way, or to put another example before the students, or take up an alternate case study, and so on. But in the online mode, when most students, as mentioned by Professor Saili ma'am, that they switch off their cameras, and then we don't know what's happening on the other end. So we have to break the monotony of our lecture. So after 10 minutes, because the retention time is very small, after 8 to 10 minutes, can I bring in some other speaker to continue with my topic for the day and also ensure that my learning outcomes are achieved at the end of my lecture? So how do I bring in this? So I can go to the YouTube, I can go to the SWAYAM platform, find out who's the best of teachers in the domain, the course that I teach, bring a clipping of 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then play that after 10 minutes, because the lecture has to have continuity. And after that speaker has spoken, you can again, ask uh, students questions, right? After again 10 minutes, as ma'am said, you can have role play. After another 10 minutes, you can have a brainstorming session. After 10 minutes, you can have a case study. So how is it that I want to engage my students in the time that is allotted to me for that course, and also ensure that I achieve the uh, course outcomes or the learning outcomes for that particular uh, period that is given to me, assigned to me. So we have to bring in variety of modes into this online, or even if it's offline today, the same holds good. Now, this is what we did at COEP. This is something that you can also think of. For a 3-credit course, in the offline mode, we would have 3 hours of teaching. So in the timetable, I have 3 slotted 1-hour lecture period where I would go to the class and deliver. So what we said was, because we are in the online mode, we are relatively delivering at a faster pace compared to what we would have done in the offline mode, because there is this eye-to-eye contact. We look into the eyes of the students look at us, and then we are able to gauge, and then we either accelerate or slow down. But here we don't know, we are just going on and on and on. So this is what we did. We said, okay, if we are going to move at an accelerated pace, not really knowing how students are absorbing us, we reduced the lecture time to 45 minutes. So we said we will not have a lecture of 1 hour duration, but 45 minutes. And we said we will not have 3 such lectures, online lectures, but 4 online lectures in a week, which ultimately is equal to 3 hours, 45 minutes each, 4 such lectures. And this is what we have been doing from day one since April last year. Now, also in these 45 minutes, the teacher is asked that every 10 minutes or 15 minutes, we take a polling. Means there would be some questions asked by the teacher, objective type questions, and where student has to, it's compulsory for the student to answer. And we say that this polling some weightage will be given to this polling. So it makes sure, one, that students attend online. There is also some weightage given to attendance. Then the polling or the quiz that we take at the end of 10, 15 minutes. So a lot of efforts are required by the teacher to do this, to break the monotony of my 45 minutes. To make it simple, let's say every 15 minutes, I have a small quiz for 5 minutes. Or after every 15 minutes, I will bring someone else into the online class, who will continue where I left, and it provides continuity to my lecture. So which means that at the end of 45 minutes or at the end of 40th minute, I will again run the last quiz. And this quiz that I run will also ensure that I have achieved the intended learning outcomes that I was wanting to. So this is one thing that every teacher must do. Very rightly mentioned, portrayed by Professor Mrs. Saili ma'am, saying that this is how we have to break the monotony, have quizzes, keep students attracted, keep their attention towards us all the time. Now, with these 4 lectures of 45 minutes each, we said that the first three lectures would be utilized only for teaching. Of course, you take quizzes, you break the monotony. The fourth last lecture in the week of 45 minutes was only revising what was taught in the first 3 lectures. So if some student has missed for some genuine reason, the teacher is revising what was taught in the previous 3 lectures of 45 minutes each in the same week. So we were ensuring that we are not simply teaching, but also summarizing every week what we are teaching. And then the teacher was told, students were also told, that every Friday, for all the courses in the semester student is taking, let's say I'm a regular student, I have no backlog courses, I have 5 courses, I have registered for 5 courses. Then for each of these courses, what was taught by the teacher in those 4 sessions of 45 minutes, the 4th session is a revision session. Every Friday, the teacher would release an assignment for 10 marks, let's say, on whatever has been taught in the week. So that also ensured that through the assignment given to the students, the teacher is able to understand, get a feedback, correlate whether the learning outcomes have been achieved, whether students are learning what I wanted them to learn, whether the skills that I wanted them to acquire are also being possessed by the students, and so on. So every Friday, a student would receive from each of his 5 teachers, because he has registered for 5 courses, he would receive an assignment. This assignment is put up because every teacher at CAP teaches on the Moodle platform, every teacher. So we have not spent, it's a freeware. We have not spent any money on this except for using the Cisco WebEx, as the integrated with the Moodle. So that becomes our, LMS, the learning management solution, or the tool that we say. And every week, the student will receive 5 assignments, short assignments. And by Sunday midnight, assignments are released on Friday. By Sunday midnight, 11:59 in the night, they have to upload their assignments. And then if the student doesn't upload, he loses those 10 marks. And then the teachers would evaluate those assignments, discuss that in the next week's revision session, and also what was taught in the previous 3 sessions in that week of 45 minutes each, and again released assignments the next week. And this went on. Now, this is one such method that we adopted, and we found it very, very invigorating and useful. Both teachers and students got connected to each other. and ensured that students were learning. And I'm sure the teacher was also learning as much as the students. Because in every course that we deliver, every session that we deliver, we all learn, right? Maybe we don't tell the students that I have learned something today. We all learn when we teach something. And then at the back of the mind, we tell ourselves, this particular concept I never understood as a student, but today as a teacher, I understood this better. I fortified my own understanding. I became more confident in teaching the course that I was. Maybe I didn't understand or relate something 2 or 3 previous years. I was teaching the same course, but at the fourth time when I was teaching the course, it occurred to me that I'm learning something. I can present this concept in a different way. So for teachers also it is learning as much as it is for students. So I think we have to use different modes and ensure that we keep the students engaged all the time. We have to bring in that variety, whether it is offline or online. We have no choice as teachers. And believe me, the time is coming. If all the teachers are going to be available online and the best of teachers are going to be available online, why as a student should I attend to your lecture? I can get the best professor from MIT, from Stanford, from IIT. Why should I listen to Professor Ahuja's lecture? It makes no sense. Yes, I will appear for the examination which Professor Ahuja will conduct, but let me learn from the best of teachers that are available today in the world, because all the courseware that is available is by and large for free. If you need a certificate, you have to pay for it. So if I need a certificate from Stanford, I have to pay for it. But if I want to take a course free from MIT, I can do that. So I'm not sure, but I think maybe partly I have answered your question as to how differently we too as teachers have to think and innovate and come up with different solutions. Is the question answered?
Yes, sir. Mostly it has been answered, and I really like the idea that you gave you kept one lecture for the revision and summarizing, and that's really a very good idea. The fourth lecture in a week.
And
Yes,
students
but
have to submit.
sometimes the students are not very much motivated, especially in a private institute. So they come from different backgrounds. They have different purpose to get a degree. So that's the main reason which we are facing nowadays as
Yeah.
teachers.
So I think the biggest challenge today is that both the students and teachers, we are missing each other on the face-to-face side, teaching. But the biggest challenge is that both the teachers and students need counseling. Both need counseling, because it's really tiresome, and it's concentrated, when we teach, when we put in the best of our efforts to teach students, and then at the end we try to understand and realize that only few attended, not all. So that's a real pain. And also on the student side, maybe they are not finding us interesting. So I think both need counselors. And to that extent, we have provided every teacher, to overcome this difficulty. Every teacher has been given 20 students to parent, right? So teacher is a parent to those 20 students. It is 18 to 20 students every teacher has to look into, talk to them, understand from them informally through WhatsApp groups, through social media, as to what are their difficulties, their problems. And then we try to assimilate, collect, and then try to see how we can help them resolve. Many a times they are going through, uh, you know, instances where their parents can't afford devices, There is lack of internet availability, bandwidth issues are there, and so on. There could be many issues, especially in an institute like ours, where almost 40% students come from the rural background. Why 40? I would say even 50. They find it very challenging to take these courses online. They can't afford devices. They don't have adequate bandwidth. Where do they go and learn? So then these teachers who are mentors to those 20 students make sure that whosoever is teaching that student, the course teacher is able to send some notes, some handouts, so that we are able to reach out to every student. We have a website for counseling students. We have full-time teachers who teach psychology, and they also interact with students and help them overcome their stress. Each one, every student is unique, and every student's problem is unique. So they help them to great extent in overcoming their problems. But we have been working very hard for our students. So much so that we went to the alumni, went to the industry, virtually with a begging bowl, saying that please help our students, they don't have devices. And close to, I think about 175 or 180, thereabout, we were able to buy new laptops through the funding we got from our alumni, from the industry, and sent these students brand new laptops, which is their property. 4 years, 3 years, whatever. He may be in third year, okay, he doesn't have a tool, a device, here is a device. But you can remain connected with us. But then this was a big challenge for us. But somehow, with the help of our kind-hearted, large-hearted alumni and the industry, we ensured that every student is connected to us. The counselors ensured that whatever personal problems or difficulties they had, they were also able to speak to their parents and help the student overcome their difficult times. But as a teacher, we had different roles to play. Right? So different kinds of support was provided to students. The student said, sir, I'm not able to attend. My father has turned COVID positive. I don't know what to do, how to take care of him in the village. We don't have adequate facilities. So right from facilitating their parents and providing whatever help we can as teachers, we have done everything. Yes, there is still much more to be done for our students. There is no end to whatever help that can be provided. But within the best of our abilities, whatever we could do, we have done for our students. But that every teacher has done. It's not simply, when you say COEP, at COEP we have a tagline. That tagline says, faculty first, student always. Faculty first, student always. So we realize that it is only faculty and faculty alone who can drive a change, bring about transformation. And today's faculty has to don multiple roles. It's not simply teaching, but one has to go beyond teaching to make sure that my students are comfortable with the kind of teaching, learning process that has been going on for a year now.
So it's the good initiatives which has been taken by your college, and it's heartening to hear that. So just
But every teacher has to contribute.
yes,
Right?
sir. Absolutely.
So it's like you're fighting a battle, and every soldier has to fight. We can't have a soldier who's simply standing or running away, shying away and running away from the situation. So here every teacher has responded to this societal cause, a greater cause of giving back to society.
Right. I have still few things in mind. If you permit me, shall I discuss?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay. So like what I feel is I have been now into teaching profession since 13 years. So what I feel is now the studies are becoming, learning is becoming more student centric. Like we are giving so much attention to the students since playgroup, like childhood, primary level. So I'm a product of Punjab University, and then I did research from Germany. So shall not we think of our students as independent thinkers, like in our university, like everybody says prepare the notes, give to the students, everything should be uploaded before the course work course starts, so
Hmm.
everything should be there on the ERP. So I really think that this way, I think we are making the students dependent on us, dependent on teacher. They should work independently, and teacher should be as a facilitator. So wherever they need help, they should take the help. Like as a graduate and postgraduate student of Punjab University, I never had any notes from my students. Never ever. We were going to the library, browsing the books, getting it photocopied because they were foreign author books. We never had any textbook for any coursework. So I really don't know, because nowadays in colleges, from my colleagues in my own university, what I think is all the course should be, a course, and their videos, lectures, materials should be uploaded on the ERP before the course starts, before the semester starts. So I really don't know what is your take on this.
Yeah, we have just thrown open one slide, which was part of the presentation. Are you able to see it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I think this is what you are referring to. So we must emphasize this, that if students, by and large, I mean, I'm not sure how many students would have got used to reading ebooks, right? And not all institutes subscribe to ebooks. And we at COAP, when we create our curriculum, we ensure that there is one, maximum two textbooks, not beyond that. And all other books are reference books. So the syllabus is part of the uh, one or two textbooks. Now, why there is a need to give handouts or to facilitate students today? Because they have no access to ebooks. So if the content can come to them, because some learn immediately through our teaching. There are students in the class who are also slow learners. They may listen to what the teacher has said, understand partly or understand nothing, and then when they go back and read the text, they are able to correlate. Oh, my teacher was telling me this is what is mentioned in the book, so this is how it is, so it's an internal that understanding which happens within the student's mind. Now, yes, we have to do this because we are going through these times, but the other thought process is that, okay, whatever I'm going to teach tomorrow, whether it's recorded or whether it is by way of notes. So we since you said you have done your research from Germany, so these countries also look at what is known as flipped classroom, where everything is shared with the students prior to they coming to the class, and then the teacher says, okay, let's take up a problem. I hope you have gone through the notes, the recorded lectures, you have understood everything. let us discuss a few things. And through those discussions, the teacher is only facilitating the learner, the student. The teacher is trying to ensure that whatever the teacher wanted to teach during that 1 hour of time period, what was given to him or her, the teacher was trying to ensure that we are able to build the students' confidence, and he is able to understand the fundamentals. He is able to understand the fundamentals, and uh, we consolidate his learning. Right. So today we are doing this because some of us may be using a flipped mode, some of us may not be using, but the idea is to empower the student today. But you are right in saying, and that right in saying that we should have an independent learner. Yes, very true. He should become independent, but that is if I've given away all the material and I say, okay, let's discuss how to go about solving a practical problem, a problem which is live to the industry. How do we go about? So we don't take up a simple example, but we take up an example which cuts across different courses, maybe across disciplines also. And we ask the student, now tell us how do we go about bringing a solution to this problem. You may break your class into smaller groups, like how we have tutorials, or even smaller, and tell them, please work in groups and let us know what is the solution. How do we go about this problem? I hope you have read and understood everything. If you haven't, you can ask me. I will explain if something is not clear. But we expect students to come prepared, and then we want them to think independently. But then what goes beyond independent learner is the interdependent learner, a learner who can multitask and work in groups, in teams. So in one of the groups, he may be a team leader. In another group, he may not be a team leader, but one of the members of the group. So we want him to work with groups, come up with different thought processes. Each member in the group will come up with their own ideas. He has to substantiate his or her own idea to make a point. And then through this interaction between the group, they come up with a different solution, and learning and churning happens. So one has to go beyond one's thought, and one has to also look at others' thoughts and others' experiences, and how best we can derive from that and provide the best solution. I think once we move from independent to interdependent, then we also are able to say that we can, creativity thrives. We are being innovative in our approach.
Yes, sir, absolutely. So the interdependent thing is really good. Yes. So once we all implement this, then it would be great.
Yes, but now every teacher, as very rightly, suggested by Professor Saili ma'am, that every teacher has to play his or her role differently and work tirelessly for the students. So it is, just like saying, that it's whatever I do is for my students, my college, my state, my country. So that feeling of giving back to society through my students is a great feeling. So somewhere each one of us has to realize the importance of the role that we are playing as teachers today.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Do we have others also who want to ask questions?
Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Sir, my question is that you got a facility for students to get acquainted with all the situations.
Uh,
What
can-
sort of help is required from the faculty or staff, or how you are helping the faculty to cope up with all the situations?
No, can you speak a little louder? I didn't get the question.
Yeah. Sir, you got a facility for the students, so you got laptop and resources made available to them. But what sort of help the faculty need under these situations? So the lectures can be more interactive and we can engage the student in better way. So what support actually you provide to the faculties at your institute?
Uh, Although, I mean, every faculty at COEP, every faculty, without exception, uh, has a desktop, a printer, a telephone line on the table. Every faculty. And there are senior faculty who were also given laptops a couple of years ago. But we realized that if we have to empower faculty, and we are saying faculty first, student always. So if we have helped our students, we also need to empower our faculty with technology. So uh, now being, a government institute, in the sense that, of course, we are autonomous, but we have to follow the purchase procedure. Unlike a self-finance institute where you call the vendor and you tell him, I want to place an order for laptop, you deliver the laptop. So we have to upload a tender, and the tender itself has to be valid for minimum 15 days. But if you need competitive prices, it can, we have to keep it open for 3 to 4 weeks. After the tenders are open, we will go through a scrutiny process. So we undertook this exercise on the government electronic marketplace. It's called the GEM portal of the Government of India. And we spent close to 2 months, and nothing worked out for us. So then we went to the portal once again. So we had to redo the process. Right. So we started with this process in the month of October. And sometime in the month of February, we were able to place orders for state of the art laptops for every faculty at COE, every faculty, no exception.
Sir,
But
yes, sir.
but the company said we don't have 250 laptops available immediately. It's 260, I think, total. We don't have these laptops available immediately. We need 8 to 10 weeks to manufacture and then give it to you. So we lost again 2 months, 2.5 months. And then they said it's not possible to deliver. They pick up the order, but then they say now, after picking up the order after 2 months, when we inquired, sir, we will need another 15 more days. So like this, the whole process gets delayed. Ultimately, of course, the laptops arrived, and we have given it to the heads of department to distribute to the faculty in the department. But every faculty is empowered, and now every faculty, because of the lockdown in Maharashtra, every faculty is working from home. So they operate from home, and they are all empowered.
Yeah, sir. Apart from the resources what you have made available, so was there any special need to prepare psychologically to this particular environment for faculties specifically? You got some helpline website for student guidance. In similar way, it was some special attention was given to faculty apart from the resources.
Yeah. So we don't have a separate helpline for the faculty, but every head of the department was asked to stay in touch with individual faculty in the department, and to find out if he or she is going through a difficult period or a phase. And this second wave has taken a toll on our faculty as well. Right. So there were faculty who said, my husband is COVID positive. I am unable to move out of home. What do I do? And the corporation has put up a sticker outside the home saying that home quarantine. The family is home quarantine. We said, don't worry. 14 days you be at home. Any help that you need, we will provide. Whatever you can manage from your home, you manage. Don't worry. So we have to, pitch in for each other and make sure that we make them comfortable. Now, this one little thing of, okay, I mean, lockdown was now, but I'm talking of a month earlier when, somebody in the family became COVID positive, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law. I'm staying with my mother-in-law and she's COVID positive. I can't come out. Or my society is in the micro-containment zone. Nobody is allowed to leave the premises of the society and I'm staying there. No problem. So we didn't deduct their leave. We said, okay, you be also home quarantine for 14 days and whatever you can accomplish from home, you do from home. And every teacher volunteered. They said, no problem, sir. You're giving us this freedom, this flexibility. It's good enough for us. And some of our own teachers turned COVID positive in these last 15 days, 3 weeks. Some of them also hospitalized. Some are still in the hospital. But then we make sure that, okay, if he or she is in the hospital, they are attended to in the hospital. There is shortage of oxygen beds. There is shortage of ventilator. There is shortage of this injection called remdesivir. So everything, wherever possible, wherever we can help, we have been helping faculty in our own little way to make sure that each one is comfortable. But there is no helpline or a website for the faculty as such, but the heads of department have been doing a wonderful job.
Yeah, thanks, sir.
It's all about, they are part of the family. Each one of us spends, when we come to office, when we come to college, each one of us spends 8 to 10 hours in office every day. So it's almost like half day here and half day at home, because we spend 1.5 hours in traveling, maybe, I don't know, depending upon the distances. So it's almost half day here and half day home, so it's a family here. So we have to take care of each other in whatever aspect we can. So some faculty staying close to the other faculty in the neighborhood will go and visit and, ask if you need any essentials for the day or anything is required, we will help. Right? So we are all colleagues. We need to help each other. As I said, more than colleagues, we are a family. But this has to come from within. Yeah, more questions? Hibrikar sir, more questions from the participants? I'm sure there are a lot of learning has happened in these last 2.5 days. Are there more questions from the participants?
No, sir, you can continue with the topic. There are no questions. At present, there are no questions.
At present, there are no questions. Okay. Yes, somebody wanted to ask something. Okay, let me then go through the grind of the presentation, because that is what. Right. There would be some slides I would be accelerating, some I would explain, because but you can pause us anytime and ask any question that you have. Right? Any time of the presentation, you can ask a question. Right? So basically, education is all about the connect. The presentation is connected teachers, and the connect is between the teacher and the student, the guru and the shishya. And in those days, when this guru shishya, so called parampara, as we say, age old tradition, it was all about character building. But if we talk of education today, but this is how it, I mean, student would go at the guru's ashram and stay there. He had to be accepted by the guru and then stay there for years together, till such time the guru felt that the student is now matured, he has the requisite skills, knowledge, and then he can move on. So for the guru also, it was a different concept of imbibing values. But the focus on those days was on values, on spirituality, on uplifting the mind, going beyond, transcending. But that is how the journey of transfer of knowledge from the guru to the shishya, it all began then. We had these wonderful universities in our times. But today, as we see, yes, Nalanda is revived. But then these universities had scholars coming from all over the world to learn in these universities. But with passage of time, we just lost the connect. Right? So education is a form of learning in which the knowledge, skills, and behavior is, this is transferred from one generation to the next. But today we say it is through training, through teaching, through research, we are able to do this. These are some of the universities, well-known universities. The Oxford, founded in 1096, Cambridge in 1209, Harvard in 1636, MIT in 1861. A little about COEP. Our existence dates back to 1854. We came into existence before the Bombay University. We were affiliated to the Bombay University until 1949. And in 1949, when the Pune University came into existence, our affiliation moved from Bombay University to Pune University. But primarily COEP was giving licenses in those days to practice engineering. It wasn't even called College of Engineering Pune. It was called the Pune Class and Mechanical School. And over a period of time, because in those days everything evolved around sciences. Right? So engineering began all from the military era, the bridges, the dams, the construction that went on, the artillery that was made for the warfare, everything was for the military, not for the civilians or the civil society. And that is how, when they said that this could also be used by the civilians or the civil society, came up the branch of civil engineering and then mechanical and so on and so forth. But until the 18th century, we were all focusing on sciences, mathematics, and using those concepts of science and mathematics and applying them for applying them to make products, equipments, facilitating ease of those equipments for the general mankind. But soon, early in the 19th century, we saw different branches, disciplines of engineering emerging, diverging. Today, engineering has all converged. Probably in 5 to 10 years from now, I don't know, it's just a matter of time. But I firmly believe there would be no branch of engineering. What the society would need is an engineer who can provide solutions, a solutions engineer, an engineer who has knowledge of mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, electronics engineering, civil engineering, computer IT go unasked. You must have knowledge of these branches as well. Because the products and devices and services that are being made available today to mankind, to society, is seeing integration of these technologies. Nothing has remained purely mechanical, purely electrical, purely electronics. And with automation coming up in a big way through the fourth industrial revolution, we are seeing how technology is influencing the lives of people today. So since the 19th century, there was expansion of scientific knowledge and there was narrowing of disciplines. It was only in 1960s, that people started talking of computers and then evolved. Then came the era of computer engineering, and then from computer engineering emerged information technology. And in 1999, 2000, there was a boom in the IT industry. Everyone was seeking to recruit people in the IT domain. But that is how, whenever something new has emerged, the others are left behind. Today we talk of newer technologies. And as I said, engineering today is converging. How did engineering education emerge? There were very few who did some pioneering work, who did some research, which came up through basic sciences, and then it was applied and termed as engineering. And then those who did the research taught to the next generation only through their research. And the graduates were found lacking in the real world. But even in the 19th century, skills continued to thrive. We had artisans, we have musicians, we have technicians. But each one had skills, required skill sets in their own trade. Today, it is difficult to find a carpenter to do your odd job, difficult to find a plumber. Yes, you have, but you have to pay a price for it today. Gone are those artisans, those design makers, the wood cutters, the stone cutters, who carved, the sculptors. Much of it is lost today because our focus shifted from application to theory. And that is how, over the years, engineering has grown. But yes, on the other side also, more so in the western part of the world, engineering grew in different dimensions. So there were remarkable achievements in the Western universities. And we saw, and we still continue to see, students moving to the Western part of the world. Why? Because there the industry is seated in the academia. Industry is part of the university. The professor gets funding from the university to work on a live problem, and then he is able to appoint, he is able to engage, he is able to employ research assistants. These research assistants get scholarship from his industry funding, and then they are able to work on the problem statement provided by the industry. So it's a real life problem of the industry where students get an opportunity to work hands-on on the industry problem, and that problem is then solved and the solution provided back to the industry, and industry has provided a cost for getting that solution. But everything is time bound, and industry gets connected to the academia, but it gets connected to the academia. It goes only depending upon the problem statement, depending upon the industry. The industry says, okay, so and so professor is good in this particular field. Let us have him as our research consultant to whom we can hand over this problem and expect a solution from him. So the industry identifies a potential teacher capable of research and delivering a solution. But the industry comes to academia. This has not happened in our country. And that is why every time we seek this question, how can we have industry academia collaboration? How can we get connected? How do we get an opportunity for our students to work on industry problems, life problems? How do we do this? There is always this question before us. It is very simple and simpler in these COVID times, I would say. Every teacher must find an industry friend. So if I am teaching robotics, I find out the industries who make robots. I find out the industries who use robotics and automation in their manufacturing line because I'm interested. I teach that course. I visit those industries, so I must go to those industries. Find out who are the right people who are knowledgeable and also have passion for teaching. So I find an industry friend. Maybe not 1, 2, 3, 4 industry friends. But it is all about a connected teacher. It is all about being connected with the industry. So every semester, as a teacher, I'm teaching 2 courses. For those 2 courses, I find an industry friend. I have to find the industry friend because it is my course. I am teaching that course. I can't expect the college to find the industry friend for me. It is my initiative. It is for my students. So I find the industry friend today. I go to the industry friend. I share my syllabus with him. And I tell him, I have 6 units in my syllabus. In each of these units, I want you to give a talk for 1 to 2 hours, preferably a case study, which is encompassing or which is addressing the unit 1, the unit 2, the unit 3, the unit 4, 5, and 6. So maybe our semester is of 15 weeks duration. So every 2 weeks, I invite an industry friend to talk to my student for 1 or 2 hours. So I invite my industry friend in 3 months, 6 times, every 15 days. So in 13, 14 weeks, I call my industry friend for 6 times. And let us assume he talks for 2 hours each time. So I teach a course for 40 hours. And this industry friend of mine supplements my course. I teach theory, the practice, the industry practice, the case studies on each of those units that are defined in the curriculum are taught by my industry friend. So for 40 lectures I take, 40, 42, whatever be that. An additional 10, 12 hours of teaching. So 40 lectures I take, 12 hours my industry friend takes. So 30% of my course, 25% of my course is co-taught today by an industry person. But he supplements whatever I am teaching by way of current industry practices, by way of case studies, by way of telling students the technology trends in the course that I am teaching. But it is all around the syllabus that I have shared with him. There could be 1 or 2 general talks, but focusing mainly on the syllabus that I have shared with my industry friend. And then when these students go for placement, the industries now don't tell us your students are not industry ready, because we have brought relevance of industry. We have brought relevance of the industry into every teacher who has taught that course and has completed the curriculum. So there is always industry relevance to whatever has been taught. Every teacher at our institute is empowered to invite an industry person for his or her course, take his support and complete the course, and make sure every student gets a flavor of the industry experience, industry practices. Then there is no complaint from the companies who come and place our students. There is absolutely no such complaint, because there is relevance brought to our teaching. The institute does offer payment to these people who come from the industry. But my friends, there are many such industry people who don't want that payment or money. They say we are doing it for the larger cause of society. We get our salaries from the industry. We don't need your little money or contribution that we pay. But there are some who take the money, which is all right. But I have to find an industry friend. Now, that industry friendship doesn't end in the semester. I have to continue with that industry friend. Next semester, I teach some other course. So for 6 months, I will not be in touch with my industry friend. No, 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 no. That does not happen. I have to make sure that with this industry friend, Diwali time, I send him a WhatsApp or an email greeting. New Year time, I send him an email greeting. Whenever there is an function in the college, I send him a greeting inviting him. Maybe if it is in my department, a function is held, I call him as one of the chief guests or guest of honor, of course with the permission of the head of the department and the principal. of the institute. But I bring that person to the college. I am in touch with that industry friend. Whenever there is a newsletter released by the department, by the institute, I send him a copy of that. And when this industry friend starts teaching in my class, my students also ask him intelligent questions. Then this industry friend tells his company HR, please go to this college. The students are very bright. They ask very intelligent questions. Please pick up some students from the from this college. So it is all about remaining connected and creating friendship. Connect with the industry. We teachers must connect with the industry because we are engineering teachers. All our engineering has to be applied. So we have to remain a part of the connection with the industry. And if you build this friendship for 1 or 2 years, after 1 or 2 years, you tell your industry friend, I'm sending you 2 students, 3 students. Can you give them a project in the industry? He will say yes, or she will say yes. You tell him that, can I send these 3 students for summer internship? He will say yes, because you have maintaining relations with the industry friend. So students get internship, students get to work on live projects. And as I said, if that industry friend is happy with the performance and quality of your students, if you have worked around the students and worked on the students, then that industry friend will also not hesitate in offering jobs to the students. So why should we leave it to our training and placement officer? Why should we leave it to the principal or the director of the institute to look into the placements? Why can't I place? What is my credibility? Can I not place every year 3 or 4 students whom I guide? It's not a big ask, because I have connect with the industry. I have established relation with the industry. And believe me, friends, if you keep growing like this, your friendship with the industry, then in 4 to 5 years, don't be surprised if that industry friends comes back to you and says, I have a problem, a small research problem. Can you get associated with this? Or can you take up this as consultancy work? You will start generating revenue for yourself and for the industry, for the institute. But this can happen only if I'm connected to the industry friend. But if I have a friend who I connect with in the first semester and I don't talk to him for next 8 months, I have lost that friend. I have to start all over again. So it is all about keeping friendship. It is all about keeping connect. And in these times, just inquiring, how are you keeping? How's your family? Through an SMS, through a WhatsApp message, sending small little greetings on every occasion that we have, sharing some of the literature that you come across, some current research, send him that research paper. This is something new which is happening in this area. It may be of interest to you. Likewise, he too will start sharing material with you. But that friendship must continue, that bonding must continue. We have friends, our personal friends, school friends, college friends, colleagues in the department who are friends. What do we do? Do we meet them only once a year or greet them once a year? No. We make our small groups and we are in touch with each other throughout the year. Likewise, this industry friend must also, we must connect with that industry friend throughout the year and be in touch. And don't be surprised, as I said, in some period of time, this industry friend will come back to us giving us an offer for doing sponsored research or consultancy work. We have to grow our connect with the industry. We have to remain connected with technology. We have to remain connected with our students. We have to remain connected with our colleagues. Wherever we go, whatever we do as teachers, we have to get connected. And for connection, you need communication. You need to communicate. We need to communicate. We need to get connected. I think if this is done, if we work with that energy and passion to remain in touch, not only with you know, the course that we are teaching or with technology, but also with friends, also with students. Today, we teach a class, second year class. Next year again, I teach a new students coming into the second year class. But do I remember all the 60, 70 names I taught the previous semester? We don't remember the names of the students. Maybe one or two who are bright, or one or two who did not learn anything from the class. But we don't remember all student names. Even surnames we don't remember. Only 4, 5, 8, 10 students of that class, which is now in the third year. I'm teaching the next class after 1 year in the same second year, odd semester or even semester. Where are we? How much connected are we to our students, to our colleagues, to our industry friends? Then this industry institute collaboration, it's not a collaboration, it's a partnership. In partnership, you have something at stake, the industry friend has something at stake. That is how it is. Right? So we look at teaching, we look at research, innovation, we look at giving back to society as extension services. Teaching, yes, we are all doing research. For some it is yes, for some it is no, for some it is yes and no both, partly. Extension application, how much are we giving? How much of our research is being translated and given back to the industry? I think by and large, no, there would be some exceptions, yes, where technology is transferred. Earlier, the faculty were doing research. Now, the institutes of higher learning, the IITs and NITs, they have started creating a data bank as to what was the research problem a student undertook, under whom, which professor he did his research, who supervised his thesis, and has that research gone to the industry? Has that research brought funds back to the institute and for the teacher? Or simply some academic research was done, degree was awarded, was it of any use to us? So they have started, introspecting and started collecting this data. We are yet to do this. But this is how we learn from each other and we grow over a period of time. But the fact remains as we see today. So a student graduates and he has to work 4 years, he does his undergraduate study. For him to become mature, to ensure that the program educational objectives are achieved after he has worked for 3 to 4 years in the industry is very, very important today. And then with our lifespan growing, we may be asked to work because we have to feed our family. We have to make sure that those who are depending upon us, we provide them with the basic necessities in life. So I may have to work for maybe 50 years at least. One graduates at the age of 20, 21. The working will not stop till I turn 70 because the average lifespan has gone up, which means I have to work for a longer period of time to be able to defend my family. But in these 50 years, lot many changes can take place. If you look at some of the achievements of the 20th century, a lot has been given to us by the 20th century. We also progressed in the 21st century. We recall as students, there was no internet then. There was no Google then. Today, all information is available to the student. They say at the click of the button, everything is available to students. So if everything is available and they have access to knowledge, what is it that we are going to teach our students? So in 2006, the Kindle, the iPhone, Uber, Airbnb. Uber runs the biggest transportation fleet, but does not own any vehicle per se. Airbnb does not own any hotel, but still controls virtually all those hotels connected on the Airbnb platform. Android, Oculus, Instagram, Snapchat. Why Snapchat? Even WhatsApp was not available in 2006. And if you see, look back in 15 years, technology has just traveled at a pace which is unprecedented. Time to reach 100 million customers, so it took 75 years for the telephone. There were times when we had to we had to go through the telephone exchange, tell the operator, I want to book a call. Can you get me connected to someone in Delhi, in Bangalore? And then after 1 hour, if it's, then they would take 1 hour, 2 hours, and then say, okay, your call is connected. And we could speak on the telephone for 3 minutes. When 3 minutes were coming to an end, the operator would, interrupt and say, do you want extension or you just want to close your call? Hello. हाँ मुझे लेक्चर पे ले मापो गला ना ना Yeah, thank you for unmuting me. I'm sorry for this disturbance. So the challenges that we face in this century are inclusive and sustainable development, global thinking, and building capacity, capabilities, and competitiveness amongst our students. So it is our prime responsibility that we are building capacity, competitiveness, and capability amongst our students. He or she, my student, is able to think differently, act differently. And we have to bring about his overall development, build his personality with all facets that one is expecting today. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir, visible.
Okay. And if you look at our education models today, there is overemphasis on analysis, little hands-on experience. We are disconnected from the real world problems. Unlike in the West, the labs are no longer interesting. There is a defined set of experiments prescribed by the university. The student will come monotonous, conduct the experiment, write down the results, write down the inferences. But that is how it has been going. You have to perform any 8 experiments out of 10 or 12 listed. Out of those 8 experiments, 2 will be study experiments. So actual experiments are only 5 or 6, and those 5 6 are also not really connected to a real life application. But if you do this experiment, you are able to perform this, you can measure this, you can infer this, and that's about it. And all these years, there was very little focus on communication skills. We as teachers would go to the class, teach, set question papers, they appear for the exam, they get their marks graded, they move on. But little did we focus on the student's personality development, student acquiring soft skills, student being able to communicate well. This is our responsibility as teachers, how we can empower our students differently today so that they can survive the competition. The teaching speed has increased. Absorption is difficult. There are 2 types of students: those who come well prepared and those who do not follow anything or are not interested. We as teachers have to make sure that we provide a balance to both. The challenges are many. There are mobile games, distractions to the students. Students are not able to differentiate between what is right and wrong information. Students stay awake in the night to look at unwanted material. They get connected to the social media and fall prey to the social media and get misguided by what is coming on the social media. But this is how it is. These are some of the challenges that we are facing today. And a lot of material is available today. Lot of material is available today on different platforms. But we as teachers have to be better than what is available on those platforms by providing a different flavor of education that we want to give to our students. So engineering has no longer remained engineering. We have to be innovative today. The E stands for we have to be enterprising today. We have to be an engineer with an innovative bent of mind. Right? We have to look for possibilities. We have to learn at rates faster than the rate of change. Before technology becomes obsolete, I should have mastered it. Today, nobody uses COBOL. But there are still some applications, some databases which still run on COBOL. Now, if I had learned COBOL then and I still possess the skills, it will be useful to me today to earn some money out of it. But otherwise, everything I learned basic, I learned Fortran, I learned Pascal. It's all gone. I learned C, some of it remains, or yes, C, C++ is there, but otherwise, I learned DBase, Foxbase. It's no longer there. People talk of SQL, they talk of SAP, they talk of Oracle. DBase is gone, it's not there. So that is how rate of obsolescence has taken the better of us. We have to make sure that we focus on what we know, not on what we own. That is very, very important if we have to thrive in today's circumstances as teachers. We have to make sure that we use the correct human-way technology. We are able to touch every student's life in a different perspective today. So we have to bring practice into engineering. This one slide that I always like to show. We have to make sure that we learn from our research, which is evidence-based. Otherwise, it will be running like this. This is how it is. We are trying to run, but partially. So we have to make sure we move from application of knowledge to application of learning. In our times, my times in particular, one had to learn maybe 3 or 4 times in one's career of 40 years. One can change 4 jobs on an average. So one had to relearn 3 to 4 times in one's lifetime. Now here, everything becomes obsolete in 2 years or maybe less than that, which means I have to keep learning. And that is why we say that we have to create lifelong learners. Why? Because technology is becoming obsolete at a very fast pace. In our times or in my times, technology was changing every 20 years, every 10 years. So one had to relearn 10 years, 20 years, and so on. But now, by the time I master the technology, I realize technology is no longer existing. I love to keep this, give this example. My students asked me today, sir, Python? I said, no, Python, what Python? Sir, Python language, programming language. I said, no, I don't know of any Python programming language. I know of Python as a snake, not of any programming language. But Python, R, these were not there when we started teaching, there was something else. And what we learned and taught, I taught Fortran, but it's not being practiced anymore. But I taught that in class in 1989, 1990, but it's not there anymore. So a time will come when totally unimaginable things will have to be learned, and the pace at which we are going to learn is going to be. So we discussed this slide a little earlier, and maybe 1 or 2 more slides, and then I will close with, if you have more questions, we will take. So are we in a critical age or a digital age? Each teacher has to ask himself or herself, because the order and magnitude of change is changing so very fast. From face-to-face learning, we went into blended, and now it's all online. And then we have flexible, where hundreds of students, open university model, any student can take the national education policy that is coming up. A student can take credit from any institute, any university, and come back to the institute where he has taken admission and say, I have brought these credits, please merge with my existing credits and give me a degree or a diploma. Self-blend, students, learn something, they read something, and they are able to understand something what they have read, something what they have heard. Then there is peer-to-peer learning, which students at their age learn from each other. They are missing this the most today. Students are sick remaining at home. They want to come out of their homes and be back at college so that they can enjoy with friends. They can socialize with friends. So there is social learning, which we learn from society. There is experiential learning, where students intern and learn through the hands-on projects, through internships. There is the peer-to-peer learning, which they learn from each other, which they are missing the most. I can give you the Singapore universities example where, the BMW, the Mercedes-Benz, their research centers are in the university campus. All research is done in the university campus. So it's industry seated in academy. And that is how, in less than 25 years, these universities, which were set up in Singapore, are now in the top 10 or top 50 universities in the world. Just set up 25 years ago. Why? Because they have industries who are coming to them. They give them space. They say, you do your research. Our students will work on those research projects. Our faculty will work on those research projects, which means today we have to invite industry and tell them, come and sit with us and work with us together. These are some of the traits that we need to look at. Provide foundation courses, give adequate breadth, depth. So students should be able to specialize in one of the domains. If he's working in that domain, he should possess leadership qualities. He should be curious. He should be able to apply the design principles while coming up with something, social skills, global view, personal strength, so on and so forth. And the 4 C's, which are very, very relevant today, is, creativity, critical thinking, communication, collaboration. Friends, we could go on, but I think we will close at this. And if there are questions from the participants, then probably we can look at those questions. Maybe
Thanks a
one or
lot.
2 more slides. I'll just show 2 more slides and then maybe we can just conclude. Because so how should education change today? We have to, students are looking at micro certification, and what is coming into being is the gig economy, right? And the example that I learned, I want to share with you, is that of Chris Gayle. Chris Gayle, the cricketer from West Indies, he works on gig economy. He's a specialist batsman. He can also bowl. He fields well, so he's an all-rounder. And he plays for the Indian Premier League, the Big Bash League, the Caribbean League, and so on and so forth. So anybody who wants him, hires him, he plays, he goes back. So I become an expert, and people, then industry will hire me only for that small job. I complete the job, I go to another industry who needs me. Maybe I have working for 5 industries simultaneously, each one paying me for my services because of my expertise. So maybe in time to come, we will have many small entrepreneurs who will specialize, who will deliver tailor-made solutions to the industry, and the industry is not employing people, and its industry is not actually incurring job expenses on providing transport and jobs and everything. They said, okay, you're a specialist, give us this solution, we will integrate it into our product and sell our product. So everything will get outsourced. And today it will get outsourced to smaller companies, and time to come to individuals. So it's like a consultant. You come in as a consultant, you have a certificate, a micro certificate, you're a specialist in machine learning, deep learning, you know data science, you know R programming. Okay, here's a problem statement. Can you come up with a solution? Okay, I will deliver the solution. So that's how it is going to be, And these are some of the skills that our students will have to have, problem solving, cognitive, learning ability skills, adaptability skills, leadership skills, self-management skills, teamwork, organizational, open-mindedness, social career building competence, number of skills our students will need to have. And what it meant in 20th century, this is the last slide I would like to present. Good degree was good job, more experience, more money. The capital was the physical assets that I owned. Today, it is not seen like this. Good degree plus employable skills. If I have the right skills and attitude, I will get a good job. It's not more experience today, it is relevant experience which will get me the money. And the capital that I hold today is ideas and innovation. If I'm not able to ideate, if I'm not able to innovate, if I'm not able to bring a new solution on the table, no industry will keep me for long. Right? Friends, I could go on, but I would like to close at this. And maybe if there are one or two quick questions I can take. And if there are more questions, you can write to us, we can answer or whatever. Yeah. So big thank you.
Participants can unmute
And thank you
use the-
to Professor Hevrekar for giving us an opportunity to interact with all of you and share some of our thoughts and experiences with you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we proceed for vote of thanks, I will request all the participants to switch on their camera so that we can have some snaps. Please.
Sonone sir,
Yes, sir.
will you just please ask, sir, will you please just stop sharing the screen,
Yeah, just a minute.
please?
Sir, we have to take photograph with you, sir. Please.
Yeah, okay. So I've stopped sharing. I hope it's.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's done.
So if there are questions, we can take one or two quick questions. Otherwise, we can close.
Sir, I have a small question.
Yeah, please.
Sir, everyone knows that the pandemic batch to 2020-21 was unfortunately labeled as pandemic batch, and people thought that they will not be hired when it comes to placement. It was a like label for them. But now there is another question, like this batch of 2021 and 22, this batch has survived the pandemic, not for 6 months, but it is like 1.5 years now. So there are two questions, 2 points here. There are some students who do not want anything to do. They do not want to learn. They have become more lethargic. Many teachers have been doing so many efforts. They are putting in so many efforts, but they cannot bring the students to learn, make them learn. And at the same time, there are other students who wants to learn. They have developed this skill of self-learning. So we cannot say that these students, means both the students, we cannot bring these students in one bowl. Okay, we cannot label them. So if we say that, okay, these students have survived this pandemic and they have developed the skill of self-learning, at the same time, we have students who do not want to do anything. So what can be the views of HR professionals while hiring these people, while hiring these freshers? Please share your opinion so that all of us can surely be develop opinion about this, and of course think about this. Thank you so much, sir. Please.
See, the HR people are ruthless. They want students who can, who are able to have out-of-box thinking, and they are creative, right? So what, even in these times, what they look at or what they expect from a student is his logic and reasoning ability. Is he able to, given a problem statement, is he able to come up, the thought process? Does he know the steps of arriving at the solution? He may not have the solution, right, because of this pandemic, but at least he knows how to go about in arriving at a solution. So those who attend the teacher's class or learn from some other professor on any of the platforms, or self-learn, whatever, and if they are the ones who are able to go through this process of selection and interview, they get jobs, you know, so the jobs with the same salary, you know, I mean, if the highest package was last year 39 lakhs at COEP, it's still 39 lakhs this year also. But only those students who are able to come up to the expectation of the industry can go through. Now, those who are lethargic, who are not able to go through what the industry is expecting today, they expect, you know, so logic reasoning. Right? I mean, why is it that you know IIT students? I'm putting it differently. You know, I mean, putting it answering your question in the form of a question. Why is it that you know almost all, there are exceptions, 100% placements also don't happen at IITs? This for your information. Uh, why is it that you know almost all get jobs? The first question. The second is, why is it that they are paid more compared to? So if Facebook or Google is coming at COEP and they say we pay 39 lakhs, or Microsoft, but that same Microsoft, Google, when they go to IIT, they say we'll pay 1 crore as the package or 80 lakhs as the package. Are you getting? So why now? Supposing we as institutes decide we will copy IIT Bombay curriculum or IIT take any IIT, you know, one of the leading IITs, IIT Madras, Bombay. They are in the top 2 bracket in the country in the NRF ranking. We will take their syllabus and we will teach as per the syllabus. But students don't get jobs. The syllabus is the same. The textbooks are the same. But teachers are not the same. So somewhere we are also lacking, or maybe assuming that we give the same set of teachers, tell these students take the course from a professor from IIT Bombay. Will that excite him and interest him? If he's not interested, what will he do? He's not interested. So there are many students, time is short today. I know I can give you examples when they say we took up engineering because आईनी सांगितलं, बाबांनी सांगितलं. Or I took up computer engineering कारण माझे मित्र computer class coaching classला जात होते, सगळ्यांनी ठरवलं computer करायचंय, मलाही computer करायचं. अरे but why computer engineering? I don't know. All my friends want to do, so I also want to do. But त्याला interest आहे का? So they lose interest somewhere down the line, not knowing their potential and aptitude for that particular course. Now it is for the teacher. We have mentors, you know, 1 teacher to 20 students. For the teacher to find out or take him to the psychologist, counselor, and find out what is it that interests the students. त्याच्यात कुठल्या क्षेत्रात त्याची आवड आहे. So I'll tell you, you know, I mean, some of the bright students that we had have become film actors, they become musicians from COEP. They have left engineering, but they were at COEP. They have become artists, they are good in painting. They are very good in the industry, you know, some of them are actors in the Marathi industry. So they were at COEP, but they have gone into some. So we have to find out today what is the interest level of the student and can we help him in his journey. We tell him, okay, you're interested in dramatics, acting, okay, you do it, but simultaneously you study this, finish 4 years, take your degree and also do your specialization in acting. I remember a student, you know, we got that year, 3 years ago, you know, the best Firodia Karandak Award, Purushottam Karandak Award, and he directed a play, you know, it was the best, you know, first time in COEP's history, we got Purushottam and Firodia Karandak both. We won both because of this boy. And he was not interested, only interested in acting. We had to ensure that he completes engineering. Then he joined the acting institute in Delhi after he completed graduation at COE. त्याच्याकडे पैसे नव्हते. We arranged for his money to take admission at that institute in Delhi, acting school. But he was not interested in engineering. त्याचं कल वेगळीकडे होतं. Then we had to tell him, use your engineering skills to sets कसं create करशील if you are doing acting. So we had to go student by student at times to empower that student in some way. Now he was not interested in engineering. So jobचा प्रश्नच येत नाही. He was only interested in acting. So that is how it is. His name is Sadiq Sheikh. He's doing well now, but that is how it is.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for answering.
I don't know if I've answered the question, but we have to work around students.
Sure, sure, sure. Yes.
And we have introduced, that is why we have introduced liberal learning courses in our syllabus. Painting, music, dance, photography, whatever interests you, you take up in addition to engineering. So his interest is kept alive, but somehow he completes engineering and then continues with his interest in life. Not all become successful engineers.
Yes, sir. If there are no questions, are there any questions, participants? If there are no questions now, I request Anil Desai to express vote of thanks. Sir, please.
Thank you, Patil sir. So, dear all, let me take this opportunity to propose a vote of thanks in brief. Respected sir, we are really very fortunate that we have all become a part of this nice and interactive session, Connected Teachers. I have gone through one famous quote by academician PJ Kapsai, that great teachers focus not on compliance, but on connections and relationship. Connection builds trust. So to maintain this healthy relationship among students, parents, and industry is must. To understand the psychology of student is very much needed in this pandemic situation, since every student has their unique problems and have their unique comfortness. So you have rightly said that there is a wonderful tagline of COEP that faculty first and students always. Sir has mentioned that every teacher must have a industry friend, and we need to maintain and strengthen this bonding, which will benefit students and indirectly entire institution. So respected sir, on behalf of entire crowd, audience, I express my deep gratitude for guiding and motivating us. Thank you, sir.
No, I must thank each one of you and Professor Hebreker for giving us this opportunity of getting connected to you. You know, I must thank him. He has been so persuasive and very patient with me. म्हणजे ते मेल्स तर पाठवायचे, व्हॉट्सअप मेसेजेस पाठवायचे. He used to say, sir, when can you take? When can you take? My schedule is so fragile, you know, I mean, it is not only fragile, it's so dynamic also that, you know, sometimes it's difficult to honor the commitment because of sudden things that keep happening in our day-to-day activity. But he has been very patient. Thank you, sir.
Sir, it is very nice for us because of your busy schedule, and we are very fortunate that you are with us. Thank you very much, sir.
No, thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate your enthusiasm. Sir. Thank you. Thank you.
So we declare that today's session is over. Thanks a lot. Have a good day ahead. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you all the participants for your participation, active participation, and questions also. Yeah, we will stop here for today.
Yeah.
Good day to all of you.
Can I?
Yes, sir. Please, you can leave now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.